Hey guys, and welcome to this quick tutorial on how to use the Desmos graphing calculator. I'm going to show it here on the internet version. There's also an iPad app. They are extremely similar, and we're going to be using both of them. But what I show you here is going to be applicable to both. So let's say that we wanted to graph the situation in which, for a taxi, the flat rate for getting in the taxi is $3, and then it costs $2 for every mile. And I think in this case, our independent variable would be the number of miles that we travel in the taxi, and the dependent variable would be the total cost of that taxi ride. And if we were to create an equation for it, I hope it's no surprise that that equation would be y equals 3 plus 2 times x. So let's go ahead and type that in. Now you are welcome to go ahead and start typing away right here. You are also welcome to click on add item, and you click on add expression in this case. But you can just go ahead and type away. So y equals 3 plus 2 times x. All right, and so here is a graph that corresponds to this equation right here, and with this situation right here. Now as it stands, I don't think this graph does a great job depicting the situation. I mean, our axes aren't even labeled. So let's go ahead and label them. How do you do that? In the upper right-hand corner, here's a little wrench. Let's click on those graph settings. And on the x-axis, our independent variable, let's type in number of miles driven. Awesome, check it out. And it shows up right there on the axis. Phenomenal. And for our y-axis, our dependent variable, we'll put in the total cost for that taxi ride. And it shows up. So beautiful. We've labeled our axes. The next thing we want to consider is the scale. What's the best scale that we could use to capture this situation, right? What x and y values would be best to show the viewer? In this case, I'm thinking that negative values of x and y don't really make a whole lot of sense. So I'm going to go back to these graph settings, and on the x-axis, you can see what's the minimum and maximum x values that you want to use. So maybe I'll make the minimum x value 0 in this case, and 10 sounds like a fine maximum x value. This step right here kind of has to do with how many of these little tick marks you see. I usually don't mess with it too much, but you are welcome to. On the y-axis, I think, let's start at 0 again, and the maximum y value, I don't know, maybe 20, or, that looks pretty good to me. You could always make it, 30, or what have you. You can really adjust as you see fit. You can also zoom in and out by pinching or using the trackpad on your computer. Now, one thing I will note here, I know you can click on this to hide the list. You can show it again and add it again. One thing I'm noticing is that you can see on our axes the total cost, the miles driven, 0, 1, 2, 3, etc., etc. But for some reason, I kind of just want a little bit more space. So I'm going to click and drag here a little bit. And one thing I want to point out is we've got a beautiful looking graph now. Definitely looks a lot better now that our axes are labeled and the scale looks pretty good so we can see what's going on. But I'm still seeing this part of the graph right here, which doesn't really make sense in real life, right? Those negative miles driven and perhaps eventually a negative cost, it doesn't look good to me. So this is a really, really, really important part of this tutorial is how to put a restriction on what x values you use to make the graph really make more sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in a little bracket, and we're going to say x is greater than or equal to. I actually typed in the greater than sign, and then I typed the equal sign, and it made it greater than or equal to 0. And look at that. Now our graph exists only for x values greater than or equal to 0. Heck, I could have done it for x values greater than or equal to 3, but that's not really an appropriate graph either. So x is greater than or equal to 0. This graph is looking even better. Speaking of looking better, another option you may have, I like this graph as it is. If you ever want, you can go to projector mode in those settings and kind of makes everything bigger. It might not show as much, but maybe it's preferable. I'm going to go back out of projector mode, but I just wanted to at least put that on your radar. So now that we've got our graph, you can do a lot of cool things with it. If you just click on it anywhere, you can have as many ordered pairs as you like. I'm dragging right now. All of these ordered pairs that are on the graph, you can kind of scroll through them. At any important points, like where the graph hits an axis here, or if it were to hit the x-axis, or if they were to intersect, or if there was a maximum, or if there was a minimum, you can kind of click there and it'll show you those ordered pairs right away, which is pretty cool. Another note is you can change the color of your graph. You can go into edit list, and you can click on this color. You can make it red, you can make it blue, you can make it green, you can make it dash, or you can make it full. So we'll go with a purple full graph for this. And the last thing I want to show you is how you can quickly take an equation and turn it into a table of values. So all you do is click on this, edit list button again, and next to your equation, you have the option to duplicate it, to delete it, of course, but check this out. Convert to table, boom! It makes it into a table. Now, the default is to start with x values of -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. In this case, I'm just going to go 0, down, 1, 2, 3, 4. What's really interesting is if you do this enough and you make a pattern, you can just start hitting enter, and it will predict what you want to put in next. And look, every one of these ordered pairs shows up on your graph right here. So another very powerful tool. So that's it for this intro to Desmos. Actually, one thing I want to show you is that you can save your graph. You might as well save. Well, it's called Untitled, which I could have renamed it as Intro to Desmos graph, whatever you want. Save, and then what you can do if you're logged in with your Google credentials is you can print it or you can share it, you can send it, and you can email it or you can take this link or what have you. So definitely very, very valuable stuff, and we're gonna have a lot of fun with Desmos this year. So thanks for the time. Hope it was helpful.